podcasts in all the towns in all the world. You walked into mine.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All I ask is that you jump over to iTunes and give me a review. Today is a major milestone, 100 episodes. I want to thank you all for the support that you have given me as I have endeavored to produce this podcast. So, as I did for episode 25, I will go with a Humphrey Bogart film. Today's movie is a film noir classic, The Maltese Falcon, 1941. I will go out on a limb and say that this is maybe the best film ever made.
Actors.
Humphrey Bogart played the main character, Detective Sam Spade. The great Humphrey Bogart was covered in episode 25, Sahara, 1943. Ward Bond played the role of police detective Tom Polis. Bond was covered in episode 53, It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. Mary Astor played the role of Bridget O'Shaughnessy. Astor was born in Illinois in 1906. Her parents thought she was a beautiful baby, and who doesn't think their baby is beautiful, and they began entering her in beauty pageants. At the age of 14, she was spotted by a Hollywood bigwig and given a small role in The Scarecrow, 1920. This movie was followed by other silent roles such as Beau Brummel, 1924, and Don Juan, 1926. Astor was able to make the transition to talkies with films such as Red Dust, 1932, Convention City, 1933, Man of Iron, 1935, and The Prisoner of Zenda, 1937. She earned a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for The Great Lie, 1941. Of course, that year, she was in The Maltese Falcon, 1941. Following this, her career began to taper off. During the 1950s, she was only in 5 films. Her last film was a great one, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, 1964. She died in 1987 at the age of 81. Gladys George had a small role as Iva Archer, wife of private investigator Miles Archer. While her parents were acting in Maine, Gladys was born around 1900. At the age of 3, she began working in a vaudeville act with her parents. By 1918, she was working on Broadway. Gladys started working in silent film with Red Hot Dollars, 1919. She was doing well until she was severely burned in an accident. Gladys returned to film with Straight is the Way, 1934. She was next in Valiant is the Word of Carrie, 1936, for which she received a Best Actress Oscar nomination. She had other major roles with Madame X, 1937, and Marie Antoinette, 1938. Gladys played a bar owner that had actor James Cagney die in her lap after killing his rival played by Humphrey Bogart. She then delivered the line, "He used to be a big shot." In The Maltese Falcon, 1941, she had a small part as the unfaithful wife of murdered private investigator Miles Archer. Of course, like so many others, the role that I respect her for the most is the understated stepmother, Hortense Derry, in The Best Years of Our Lives, 1946. Except for a great performance in Flamingo Road, 1949, her career was essentially over. Sadly, she died early at the age of 54 in 1954. Peter Lorre played criminal Joel Cairo. Peter Lorre was born in 1904 in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. As a youth, Lorre ran away from home and began studying theater in Vienna. He made his stage debut in Zurich before moving to Germany. His first large role was when Fritz Lang cast him as a maniac child killer in M, 1931. When those damn Nazis started messing up Germany, Lorre left for Paris, London, and then Hollywood. While in England, Lorre made The Man Who Knew Too Much, 1934, under the direction of Alfred Hitchcock. His first American films were Mad Love, 1935, and Crime and Punishment, 1935. He played Mr. Moto in a number of films. Frustrated with these roles, he broke his contract with Fox Studios. For RKO, Lorre made Third Floor, 1940, and You'll Find Out, 1940. The latter was a musical comedy mystery co-starring Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. Lorre was under contract with Warner Brothers from 1941 to 1946. Director John Huston cast Lorre in The Maltese Falcon, 1941. This major film was followed by Casablanca, 1942. Casablanca was the second of 9 movies that starred Lorre and Sydney Greenstreet. The others included Background of Danger, 1943, Passage to Marseille, 1944, The Mask of Demetrios, 1944, The Conspirators, 1944, Hollywood Canteen, 1944, which had everybody in it, Three Strangers, 1946, and The Verdict, 1946. Lorre was amazing in Frank Capra's version of Arsenic and Old Lace, 1944, starring Cary Grant and Raymond Massey. The last film he made for Warner's was The Beast with Five Fingers, 1946. Lorre played it so over the top that it is a well-respected camp movie. Lorre believed that Jack Warner kept him from working as a result of his opposition to the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. After his contract ended, Lorre worked in radio and on stage. In 1950, he returned to Germany and directed some films. Lorre returned to the United States in 1952. He was a part of the Disney film 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1954. He had another submarine role as a shark researcher in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, 1961. He made a couple of films with director Roger Corman. These are Tales of Terror, 1962, with Vincent Price and Basil Rathbone, and The Raven, 1963, with Vincent Price and Boris Karloff. Lorre's final film was The Patsy, 1964. Lorre died in 1964 of a stroke. Barton McLean played the role of Police Lieutenant of Detectives Dundee. McLean trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and went on Broadway in 1927. This led to a movie contract with Warner Brothers. McLean began with uncredited roles in The Quarterback, 1926, and The Coconuts, 1929. He quickly found his place playing tough guys in movies like G-Man, 1935, with James Cagney, Bullets or Ballots, 1936, Prison Break, 1938, Western Union, 1941, Hard-Nosed Detective in The Maltese Falcon, 1941, Swindler McCormick in The Treasure of the Sierra Madres, 1948, that got beaten up by Humphrey Bogart and Tim Holt over past due wages, and Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, 1950. He worked in television as well, playing the same gruff character. His last role was as Air Force General Martin Peterson in I Dream of Jeannie, 1965-69. McLean died in 1969 at the age of 66. Sydney Greenstreet played the head of the criminals, Casper Gutman. Great name. He was also known as the Fat Man in this movie. Primarily a stage actor, Greenstreet did not have his film debut until he was 62 years old and weighed nearly 300 pounds. Of course, that first film was The Maltese Falcon, 1941. In 8 years, he made a total of 24 films. 9 of these films included pairing with Peter Lorre. Greenstreet retired from film in 1949 and died 4 years later at the age of 75. Jerome Cowan played private investigator Miles Archer. Cowan was born in New York City in 1897. Following high school, Cowan worked in stock companies and burlesque. He debuted on Broadway in 1923. His first film role was Beloved Enemy, 1936. He soon found his place in film as a debonair sophisticate with a bad attitude. These movies include There's Always a Woman, 1938, Torrid Zone, 1940, Crime by Night, 1944, and Mr. Skeffington, 1944. He was in The Maltese Falcon, 1941, for just a bit, Riff Raff, 1947, The DA That Indicted Kris Kringle in Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, Frisco Lil, 1942, Fog Island, 1945, and Deadline for Murder, 1946. He had comedy roles as well, playing Dagwood's boss in the Blondie series. When his film career faded, he adapted well to television. Cowan died in 1972 at the age of 74. Elisha Cook Jr. played novice criminal Wilmer Cook. Born in 1903, Cook started getting college rah-rah roles in the mid-1930s with young stars like Judy Garland. And they won't forget 1937, they learned that his talent was as a psychopath. This set him on a path to play killers and little feared men in movies like The Maltese Falcon, 1941, Phantom Lady, 1944, The Big Sleep, 1946, The Killing, 1956, and Chicago Confidential, 1957. Cook was very successful on television as well. My first exposure to Cook was from Magnum P.I., 1981 to 88, where he played a semi-retired gangster by the name of Ice Pick. This played in perfectly with his movie roles and assumed mob connections of character Rick, who even at one point owned a nightclub named Rick's Place. William Hopper had a small uncredited role as a reporter. Director John Huston gave the small role of Ship Captain Jacoby to his famous actor father, Walter Huston. I will defer going into the backstory of this great actor until I get to maybe The Treasure of the Sierra Madres, 1948, or Yankee Doodle, 1942, or The Devil and Daniel Webster, 1941, where he played Mr. Scratch, aka the Devil. Commentary. The great Roger Ebert said of this movie, and I'm quoting now, 1. This movie defined Humphrey Bogart's performance for the rest of his life. His hard-boiled Sam Spade rescued him from a decade of middling roles in B-gangster movies and positioned him for Casablanca, Treasure of the Sierra Madres, The African Queen, and his other classics. 2. It was the first film directed by John Huston, who for more than 40 years would be a prolific maker of movies that were muscular, stylish, and daring. 3. It contained the first screen appearance of Sydney Greenstreet, who went on, in Casablanca and many other films, to become one of the most striking character actors in movie history. 4. It was the first pairing of Greenstreet and Peter Lorre, and so well did they work together that they made 9 other movies, including Casablanca, 1942, and The Mask of Demetrios, 1944, in which they were not supporting actors but actually the stars. 5. And some historians consider The Maltese Falcon the first film noir. It put down the foundations of that Native American genre of mean streets, knife-edged heroes, dark shadows, and tough dames. Okay, now I'm through quoting. Also, The Maltese Falcon has one of the best examples of a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin is a plot device that moves the characters through the story. However, it otherwise has very little relevance to the story.
Story.
The movie begins with a history of the Maltese Falcon. In 1539, the Knights Templars of Malta paid tribute to Charles V of Spain by sending him a golden falcon encrusted from beak to claw with rarest jewels. But pirates seized the galley carrying the priceless token, and the fate of the Maltese Falcon remains a mystery to this day. The movie then jumps to the offices of private detectives Spade and Archer. Sam Spade, Humphrey Bogart, is in the office rolling a cigarette. His secretary, Effie Prine, Lee Patrick, comes in to say there is a customer outside and she is a knockout. Miss Wonderly, aka Bridget O'Shaughnessy, Mary Astor, is ushered into the office. She is well groomed and wearing a dead animal around her neck. Now I have to stop for a minute. This is the only issue I have with this movie. Men are supposed to go nuts because she is so beautiful. However, she is not. I thought I was missing something and went back and checked her career. She was a big star in the silent film days and did pretty well with the talkies. But she is silent film pretty and not really the kind to make people go crazy. Anyway, that's my only problem with this film, so I will leave it alone. Miss Wonderly tells Spade that her sister has taken up with a man named Floyd Thursby and that she needs to be found before their parents return from Hawaii. She says Thursby picked up the mail she sent and says he would come to the hotel that night if he couldn't get her sister to come. About that time, Miles Archer, Jerome Cowan, comes into the office. Wonderly emphasizes that Thursby is very violent. Archer is smitten with her and he agrees to go on the stakeout that night. After she leaves, Archer says he saw her first, to which Spade replies, "You've got brains." The scene cuts away to a dark street where Archer is gunned down by an unknown shooter before rolling down the hill. Spade is at home and gets a call from police detective Tom Polhouse, Ward Bond, that Archer is dead. Spade calls Effie and asks her to tell Archer's wife that he is dead. Spade meets Detective Polehouse at the murder scene and goes over the location of the killing, but doesn't check the body.
Let's see, shot up here, huh? Standing like you are with his back to the fence. The man who shot him stood here. Went over backwards, taking the top of the fence with him, and went on down the hill and got caught on that rock. That it?
That's it. The blast burned his coat. You want to go down and have a look at him before we take him away?
No, you've seen everything I could.
His gun was still tucked away on his hip, hadn't been fired. His overcoat was buttoned. I found a $100 bill in his vest pocket and 30-some bucks in his pants.
Archer has not been robbed, his coat is still buttoned, and the gun that was used to kill him was an English model. Spade leaves, saying he is going to tell Archer's wife. Instead, he phones for Wonderly and finds out that she has left the hotel with no forwarding address. Spade makes it back to his apartment just ahead of Detective Polehouse and Lieutenant Dundee, Barton McLean. The cops start asking questions about Ms. Archer and whether he owns a gun. They tell Spade that Thursby was shot in front of his hotel about 30 minutes after Spade left Archer's body. Spade says the police are cracking Foxy, which, as best as I can tell, means talking slyly or in riddles.
What's your boyfriend getting at, Tom? Just this. Thursby was shot down in front of his hotel about a half an hour after you left Bush Street. Your paws off me. What time did you get home? Just a few minutes ahead of you. I was walking around thinking things over. We know you weren't here. We tried to get you on the phone. Where did you walk to? Out Bush Street. You see anybody? No, no witnesses. Well, I know where I stand now. Sorry I got up on my hind legs, boys, but you fellas trying to rope me made me nervous. Miles getting bumped off upset me, and then you birds cracking Foxy, but it's all right now that I know what it's all about.
The cops know the two murders are linked, and they still suspect Spade of the Thursby murder. When Spade gets to the office, Effie tells him that Iva Archer, Gladys George, is in waiting for him. When he goes into the office, she kisses him in a way that indicates they've been having a relationship. She then asks if he killed Archer, because he said if Archer wasn't around, they would be together. He sends her away with a promise that he will come to see her soon. But Effie comes in and tells Spade that Iva had just come in before she arrived at her house at 3 a.m. Spade gets a call from Miss LeBlanc, and before he heads out, he tells Effie to have Spade and Archer removed from the doors and replace it with Samuel Spade. When Spade gets to the location, it is Wonderly, who admits her name is Bridget O'Shaughnessy. Spade tells her that the police are looking for the killer or killers, and O'Shaughnessy wants to know if they know about her. Spade said that she paid enough money that it didn't matter that she was lying before. She then switches to the, "Be generous, Mr. Spade."
You've got to trust me, Mr. Spade. Oh, I'm so alone and afraid. I've got nobody to help me if you won't help me. Be generous, Mr. Spade. You're brave. You're strong. You can spare me some of that courage and strength, surely. Help me, Mr. Spade. I need help so badly. I've no right to ask you. I know I haven't, but I do ask you. Help me.
You won't need much of anybody's help. You're good.
O'Shaughnessy admits that she knew Thursby and that they were partners before he betrayed her. In describing Thursby, she says he always crumpled newspapers around his bed so no one could sneak up on him. This bit was used to great effect in The Falcon and the Snowman, 1985. Spade quizzes her a lot about the killing of Thursby and Archer. He may be onto her already. After she tries everything, Spade starts to walk out. He then asks for all her money, a total of $500. When she brings it, she has taken out a C-note. Back at the office, Archer is off the door. Spade calls his lawyer to see how much he can keep from the police about the case. Spade is then visited by a small man that smells of gardenias, Joel Cairo, Peter Lorre. The voice of Cairo is nasal, breathy, and halting. Cairo first offers $5,000 for help obtaining a black figure of a bird, Falcon.
I thought and hoped you could assist me. The ornament is a statuette. Black figure of a bird. I am prepared to pay on behalf of the figure's rightful owner the sum of $5,000 for its recovery.
Cairo then pulls a small gun and says he is going to search the room. Spade is at first compliant, and then he disarms Cairo and knocks him out. Cairo has at least 3 passports and a ticket to the theater. When Cairo comes to, his first complaint is about his suit being ruffled. Spade calls him out for not having the $5K. Cairo says the offer is real, but he doesn't have the money with him. Spade tells him he doesn't have the bird. Cairo gives him a $200 retainer for the bird. When Spade gives him his gun back, Cairo pulls the gun and says he is going to search the office. Spade laughs and lets him. Later, Spade is walking down a busy street and a man, Wilmer Cook, Elisha Cook Jr., starts following him. Spade jumps in a taxi and drives away. He has the taxi stop at an apartment where he pushes every buzzer until he is admitted. Cook shows up in another taxi, but is stuck at the front door as Spade doubles back and leaves him behind. Spade goes back to the apartment where O'Shaughnessy is staying. She plays the damsel in distress for a bit, but Spade finally tells her to knock it off. She says, "I haven't lived a good life. I've been bad."
I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean.
The schoolgirl manner, you know, blushing, stammering, and all that.
I haven't lived a good life. I've been bad. Worse than you could know.
You know, that's good, because if you actually were as innocent as you pretend to be, we'd never get anywhere.
Spade casually mentions that he saw Cairo that night. He sees in the way she is acting that they know each other. He tells her that Cairo wants the bird. He says he needs more confidence in her, and she says she has given him all of the money she has. To which Spade says there are more ways to gain trust than money. Then he kisses her. They decide to leave a message for Cairo to meet them at Spade's apartment. When Cairo shows up, he tells Spade that there is a boy watching the house. Spade says he knows, as it is Cook, the same one who followed him before. There is palpable tension between Cairo and O'Shaughnessy. O'Shaughnessy says she doesn't have the Falcon, but she will have it in a week because she knows where Thursby hid it. When Cairo asks, "What happened to Thursby?" O'Shaughnessy says, "The fat man did it." The fat man seems to scare them both. They continue bantering about Europe when they get into a fight over who could take care of a lookout better with some vague homosexuality references. Spade jumps in and takes the drawn gun from Cairo. Cairo complains that this is the second time Spade has laid hands on him. Spade double slaps him and says, "When you're slapped, you'll take it and like it." About this time, Detective Polehouse and Lieutenant Dundee come in and ask about the affair with Iva Archer. When Cairo and O'Shaughnessy start fighting again, the police burst into the room. Spade spins a tell it was a joke that they played on the detectives. Spade smarts off to the lieutenant and gets smacked. After the police leave, Spade starts grilling O'Shaughnessy. She tells that she was hired to steal the Falcon in Europe. She says she doesn't know why it's valuable. She says Cairo was going to betray them, so O'Shaughnessy and Thursby stole it first. She does some more damsel in distress as Spade looks out the window at Cook. In the morning, Spade goes to Cairo's hotel. In the lobby, Cook is waiting. Spade starts prodding Cook to see who he's working for. Spade then tells the hotel detective that there is a gunsel in his lobby. The hotel dick throws the gunman out. When Cairo comes in, he is roughed up after spending the night with the police. Spade heads back to the office and O'Shaughnessy is in his office. He has a message from the DA and Casper Gutman, a.k.a. the Fat Man, Sydney Greenstreet. Gutman says he got the message that Spade sent through Cook, and he will call back. O'Shaughnessy is now calling Spade darling. She says that her room has been ransacked. He sends her to stay with Effie. When Spade calls the DA, Iva Archer comes in and says she called the police on him the previous night. He asks her where she was the night her husband was murdered. She lies and says at home. After she leaves, Gutman calls and Spade goes to meet him. Cook opens the door to the room and the large Gutman is in the background.
Spade.
How do you do, Mr. Gutman?
You begin well, sir. I distrust a man who says wait. He's got to be careful not to drink too much, because he's not to be trusted when he does. Well, sir. Here's to plain speaking and clear understanding.
Spade throws out the blackbird topic. Spade implies that he is in business for himself and knows where he can get the bird. Spade flies into a rage to trick Gutman into thinking he is serious. As Spade leaves in one elevator, Cairo comes up in the other. At the DA's office, they quiz Spade about the murders. Spade throws down on the DA and the stenographer and leaves saying he's the only one who can solve the case.
Who killed Thursby?
I don't know.
Perhaps you don't, but you could make an excellent guess.
My guess might be excellent or it might be crummy, but Mrs. Spade didn't raise any children dippy enough to make guesses in front of a district attorney and an assistant district attorney and a stenographer. Now, both you and the police have as much as accused me of being mixed up in the other night's murderers. Well, I've had trouble with both of you before. And as far as I can see, my best chance of clearing myself of the trouble you're trying to make for me is by bringing in the murderers all tied up. And the only chance I've got of catching them and tying them up and bringing them in is by staying as far away as possible from you and the police, because you'd only gum up the works. You getting this all right, son, or am I going too fast for you?
No, sir. I'm getting it all right.
Good work.
When he gets to his building, Cook is there waiting to take him to Gutman. In the hall, right outside the door, Spade tricks Cook and takes his gun away. Gutman tells the story of the Falcon for those that had trouble reading at the beginning of the film. The value of the Falcon is estimated to be in the millions. Gutman tells the story of the Falcon's travels until he found out 17 years prior that it was in the hands of a Russian general. Gutman sent Cairo, Thursby, and O'Shaughnessy to get it. Once the trio recovered the bird and found out its value, they started double and triple crossing each other. Spade starts getting dizzy because Gutman has drugged him. When he tries to leave, Cook trips him and kicks him in the head. Cairo comes out of the back room. When Spade wakes, it's very late in the day. He calls Effie and finds out that O'Shaughnessy never went to her house. Like a good detective, he searches the room. Under the shipping news in the paper, he finds out that a ship, the La Palma, is arriving that day at 5:30 from Hong Kong. He knows that O'Shaughnessy has been in Hong Kong because of the labels in her clothing. Spade goes to the dock and finds the ship ablaze. They say everyone got off the ship okay. Spade goes back to his office and explains the story to Effie. At the end of the story, the mortally wounded ship captain Jacoby, Walter Huston, staggers into the office carrying a package wrapped in Chinese newspaper and tied with string. He drops the package and falls to his death with no explanation. Spade opens the package and he and Effie see the Falcon. The phone rings and Effie answers. It is O'Shaughnessy screaming and begging for help. Spade tells Effie to call the police and tell them most of the story. He checks the Falcon in at a bus terminal baggage storage area. He mails the claim ticket to a post office box. Spade jumps a taxi and heads to the address he was given by O'Shaughnessy. It's a bunch of abandoned buildings in a bad part of town, but with no O'Shaughnessy. Spade calls Effie and tells her not to worry. He returns to his apartment, and just like a bad penny, there's O'Shaughnessy. When they walk into the apartment, Cook is behind the door with a gun, while Gutman and Cairo are seated in the living room. Spade stands up to Cook, and the young crook is a little off-put. Cairo has a gun on Spade as well, but Gutman gives him $10,000 for the Falcon.
10,000? We were talking about a lot more money than this.
Yes, sir, we were. This is genuine coin of the realm. The dollar of this, you can buy $10 of talk.
Spade says they have to find a fall guy for the murders. Spade decides on the young hood Cook.
We've got to have a fall guy. The police have got to have a victim, somebody they can pin those 3 murders on.
3, but it is only 2 because Thursby certainly killed your partner.
All right, only 2 then. What difference does it make? The point is, we've got to give the police...
Come, Mr. Spade. You can't expect us to believe at this late date that you're the least bit afraid of the police, or that you're not quite able to handle...
I'm in this up to my neck, Gutman. I've got to find somebody, a victim, when the time comes. If I don't, I'll be it. Let's give him the gunsel. He actually did shoot Thursby and Jacoby, didn't he? Anyways, made to order for the part. Look at him.
At this point, Spade thinks Thursby killed Archer, and Cook killed Thursby, and Captain Jacoby. Spade has the bird, so Gutman won't let Cook shoot him. When Gutman says no to the deal, Spade recommends Cairo and then O'Shaughnessy for the fall guy. When Cook becomes convinced they are going to turn on him, he moves towards Spade, but Spade slugs him and O'Shaughnessy picks up the gun. When Spade reaches for it, she hands it to him. Spade and Cairo put the knocked out man on the couch. Gutman agrees to give up Cook as the fall guy. Gutman also says that the entire group must stay in sight of each other until the Falcon is delivered. Spade calls it the dingus, and by dingus, of course, he means Falcon. I think we should all try and work dingus into our conversation every day for the betterment of the English language. Spade wants the details filled in before they make the final arrangements. Gutman says that Thursby and O'Shaughnessy were really allies, and killing him was to make O'Shaughnessy rejoin the group. Gutman also says he tried to make a deal with Thursby, but that he was too loyal to O'Shaughnessy. When Spade asks about Captain Jacoby's killing, he is told that O'Shaughnessy and Thursby had been seen around the boat in Hong Kong. O'Shaughnessy may have seduced the captain, as that is her strong suit. Gutman says he and Cairo decided to throw in together, and those two, along with Cook, went to the ship where they met the captain and O'Shaughnessy. Gutman believed that he had a deal for the Falcon, but O'Shaughnessy gave them the slip. The group found O'Shaughnessy at her apartment, and when the captain tried to climb out the fire escape, Cook shot him. O'Shaughnessy told Gutman that the Falcon was going to Spade's office. She also made the misdirected phone call to lure him away. Cook wakes on the couch, and all eyes are on him.
I'm sorry indeed to lose you, but I want you to know I couldn't be fonder of you if you were my own son. Well, if you lose a son, it's possible to get another. There's only one Maltese Falcon.
O'Shaughnessy has been holding the $10,000 for Spade, and when Gutman asks for it back, there is only $9,000 inside. She denies it, and apparently Gutman palmed the bill. Gutman gives the $10K back to Spade and warns him about O'Shaughnessy. It seems he knows by now. Near sunrise, Spade calls Effie and tells her how to retrieve the Falcon so it can be brought to his apartment. They all wait while Effie retrieves the bird. Gutman takes the package and is overwhelmed with excitement until he scrapes the Falcon with a knife and determines it is a fake. While they are distracted, Cook escapes from the apartment. Spade blames O'Shaughnessy, and Cairo blames Gutman. Finally, Cairo breaks down crying. Gutman recovers first and decides to go back and see if the Russian general tricked him. Cairo says he will go along on the new quest. Gutman wants the $10K back, and Spade keeps $1,000 for his troubles. Gutman and Cairo leave the apartment. Spade calls the police and tells Detective Polhouse the story. O'Shaughnessy sticks to her story about Thursby. Spade knows that Archer was killed by a woman because his coat was snapped. Spade grills O'Shaughnessy and finds out her plan was to have Thursby killed or framed for the murder of Archer that she committed. When Thursby was later killed, she knew Gutman was in town. She then drops back to the "I love you, Sam," to which he replies, "I hope they don't hang you, precious, by that sweet neck. The chances are you'll get off with life. That means if you're a good girl, you'll be out in 20 years. I'll be waiting for you. If they hang you, I'll always remember you."
Well, if you get a good break, you'll be out of Tehachapi in 20 years, and you can come back to me then. I hope they don't hang you, precious, for that sweet neck.
You're not...
Yes, Angel, I'm going to send you over. The chances are you'll get off with life. That means if you're a good girl, you'll be out in 20 years. I'll be waiting for you. If they hang you, I'll always remember you.
Spade goes on to say that he had to do something about his partner, even though he didn't care for him, and that he won't play the sap for her. He says she is taking the fall. He weighs out the pros and cons. Spade does admit that more money would have scaled on her side. Detective Polhouse and Lieutenant Dundee show up and say they got Gutman and Cairo. They all start to head for the police station, and Polhouse asks what the Falcon is. Spade replies, "It's the stuff dreams are made of."
What is it?
The stuff that dreams are made of.
Huh?
O'Shaughnessy cries as the police take her away, and the safety door on the elevator casts prison bar shadows on her. So many great lines in this movie, but don't forget the last word of the film is, "Huh?"
World famous short summary.
Dane plays a game where she misunderstands the skill of her opponent. This movie is so great. Love, femme fatale, drama, betrayal, noir. I was able to see it in a theater recently, and it was even better than on the small screen, so if you have a chance, go and see it. Bogart is the coolest ever, and that says a lot about this super cool cat. Also, he regularly uses the word dingus. Another thing about this movie, it's one of the very few remakes that are better than the original. This story first came to the screen as The Maltese Falcon, 1931, and again in Satan Met a Lady, 1936. Shocking, isn't it? If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends, and if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes to give me a review. If you want to comment, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show notes to my site. Beware the Moors.